All right, class, welcome to Learning Outcome 10, PowerPoint video. In this learning outcome, we're going to use essential understanding of our operations, our fractions, our decimals, and our percents, and place value to reason about the meaning of expressions. Here's a little introduction to get into our section. Kind of a tie over from last time, a review from last time. Books cost $2 each. Records cost $6 each, and $40 was spent in total on a purchase of records and books. Explain what the equation 6r plus 2b means, equals 40 means. Be sure to describe what r and b represent. Okay, so what does r and b represent? What does the equation mean? You can pause the video and think for yourself for a minute, and then resume when you're ready. So go ahead and pause now. Okay. Now that you're back, we have 6r plus 2b. That looks like the equation for the total amount that was spent. For all in dollars. So $6 times each record, $2 times each book, times the number of books and the number of records. Okay, so remember that variables represent the number of something. So we have r represents the number of records, and b represents the number of books. The equation means that $6 times the records plus $2 times the amount of books equals $40. So it's like a reading of it. The amount of money spent on records and books is $40. So just a little reminder there. What we're going to do today is we're going to think about Student Mathematical Practice 2, reason abstractly and quantitatively. This mathematical practice is from the core standards. There are 8 standards that students need to be working on at various times and various lessons throughout your mathematical teaching. Okay, the second one is to reason abstractly and quantitatively. So abstractly is like it says, abstract, where you're working with variables and numbers, and quantitatively it's working with units and more with objects. So we're really talking about ability to contextualize, go from symbols to meaning, and decontextualize, which means go from meaning to symbols. This learning outcome is talking about the ability to contextualize. Okay, so we're going to do that here with some concrete trucks. The main premise for the next slides, or the rest of the presentation here, is the same. Okay, so we'll get used to that here. And this is the premise. A company uses 2 different sized trucks to deliver concrete blocks. The first truck can transport X blocks per trip, and the second can transport Y blocks per trip. The first truck makes S trips to a job site during one day, while the second makes T trips to the job site during one day. So it's helpful to have a time context here. What do the following expressions represent in the context of the problem? We're going to do expression S plus T. Okay. When I take S and T, I'm going to go back to what S means. The first truck makes S trips to a job site. The second truck makes T trips. Okay, so first truck is S trips to a job site. Second truck is T trips. So when we put them together, okay, S plus T means the total number of trips both trucks take to a job site. To the job site that day. So I'm going to put that day. Okay. They go at different rates, and so they can do different amounts of trips. Okay. So that's what S and T mean. What does the expression X plus Y mean? Now, X is in a number of blocks per trip for the first truck, and the second can transport Y blocks per trip. Okay. So it means the total number of blocks per trip made by both trucks. Okay, so essentially there are numbers of blocks per trip. Total number of blocks per trip made by both trucks. Okay, so total number of blocks per trip. Okay, so a little introduction to the problem here. So the same premise, the company has two trucks, they're different sizes. One can take more blocks than the other, and one makes some trips and the other makes another amount of trips. What does the expression x times s plus y times t mean? Okay. X times s plus y times t. So let's take a look at what x times s means. We got to go back to the meaning of our problem, where x, and let's remind us what x is here. X represents the number of blocks per trip. Per trip of the first truck. Okay, first truck. S is the number of trips that the truck one takes. Number of trips of truck one that they took that day. To the job site. So if I multiply them together, I have x number of blocks per trip multiplied by s trips. Okay, that equals x times s. Now the trips will cancel here. So number of trips per day, that is, okay. And we have x times s is the number of blocks. Okay, so we're going to go down to here. So x times s is the total number of blocks taken that day. Similarly, we can do y times t. Y number of blocks per trip times t trips per day is equal to y times t, number of blocks taken that day. Okay, so the total x plus x to x times s plus y times t. So I have the number of blocks taken by truck 1 that day, added together to the number of blocks taken by truck 2 that day. So x times s plus y times t is equal to the number of blocks taken by both trucks that day. Okay, so the total number of blocks taken to the job site. What if a student said the number of concrete blocks transported by the first truck times the number of trips the first truck makes plus the number of concrete blocks transported by the second truck times the number of trips taken by the second truck? So the student there is, sorry about the run-in though with the words, the student is just saying the mathematics, and they're not even focusing on the concepts, what it means to the context. Okay, So when we multiply the number of blocks per trip times the number of trips, that's the total number of blocks. Okay, so we've taken some blocks to a website, to the truck site, then another number of blocks per trip for the job site, the next number. And so we're piling, as the day goes on, we're piling mass of blocks there. So the number of blocks was what this means. Okay, so let's take a look at another expression. X times S plus Y times T divided by S plus T. So remember, we got to remember what each of these parts are. So X times S plus Y times T is equal to the total number of blocks taken to the job site that day. And we need to remember that S plus T meant that the total number of trips taken to the job was the total number of trips taken that day. Okay, so we have our X times S plus Y times T, total number of blocks taken to the job site, divided by S plus T, the total number of trips taken to the job site that day. And that, when they put the total divided by the total amount of blocks divided by the number of trips, you're getting an average here. So this means an average. Okay. But what is the average? It's the average number of blocks taken per trip to the job site by both trucks. Okay, the average. So you take the total amount of blocks by the total amount of trips, and you get an average of number of blocks taken per trip. Does this equal X plus Y? Okay. The reason why we're asking this question is that some people like to cancel off these S's and T's and get just X plus Y. So the average, when you tie it to a context, the mathematics will follow. And you can see whether things work out like you want to abstractly or not. So a lot of people want to cancel those off, but it doesn't work because what you have there is the average number of blocks taken per trip to the job site by both trucks. And X plus Y, if you recall, was equal to the total number of blocks made by both trucks. Per trip made by both trucks. Okay, and those clearly aren't the same thing. So comparing again the average number of blocks per trip by both trucks compared to the total number of blocks per trip made by both trucks. So these expressions aren't equal, even though numerically we want to just cancel things off. Okay, so using the context to help drive the mathematics is great. So we're going to continue on. We have the same situation. If you know that S plus T is greater than 2T, what does this tell you? Okay. S plus T. Now let's recall what these are. So S plus T is equal to the total number of trips made by both trucks that day. Okay, S plus T. Now 2T would mean, what does 2T mean? Well, twice the total number of trips. Made by truck 2 that day. Okay. So if we want to go S plus T is greater than 2T, it means that the total number of trips to the job site is greater than twice the number of trips truck 2 made them. Okay, the total number of trips made that day is greater than 2 times the number of trips truck 2 made. Okay. So if S and T is greater than 2T, that means that S has to be doing more trips to the job site. So we can cancel out 2T's, for example, right here, and we can say that S is greater than T. So S is taking more trips to the job site than T does. Same situation. What does this tell us? X over X plus Y is greater than 50%. Okay. Let's remember what each of these parts are. So X is equal to the number of blocks truck 1 takes per trip. Okay. Then X plus Y is equal to the total number of blocks both trucks take per trip. Okay. And if I'm doing X over X plus Y, that looks like a fraction to me. So X over X plus Y is the fraction of the blocks taken per trip made by truck 1. Okay, so truck 1 takes some, and then both trucks take some, and so that first trip by truck 1 is a fraction amount of all of the blocks that it took per trip. Now, if this is greater than 50%, it means that is the percent of blocks taken by truck 1. And if it's greater than that, then that means truck 1 takes more than half the total blocks each trip. Okay. And so now we have homework. Let's go ahead and look at a case with real numbers here. What did each of these things say with real numbers? Okay. Maybe this will help us out. If you're not sure what to do on some of these variables and what to say, let's try to think of real numbers, put in real numbers for the variables. All right, so truck 1 takes 10 blocks per trip. And 7 trips that day to the job site. Okay. Now, 10 blocks is going to be our X. Put that in parentheses. 7 trips is going to be our S. Okay. And let's go ahead and record those in line now. Truck 2 takes 4 blocks per trip. That's going to be our Y. And it takes 3 trips that day. That's going to be our T, capital T. Now S plus T is going to be our 7 plus 3. 7 trips plus 3 trips equals 10 trips total that day. X plus Y is equal to 10 blocks per trip plus 4 blocks per trip. Okay, when we put those together, we get 14 blocks per trip. Okay. Now we have our XS plus YT, which is pretty abstract here. So we're working more concretely right now. So we have 10 blocks per trip, which is our X. And I'm going to multiply that by S, which is 7 trips per day. So those trips will cancel, and it will give you a total of 10 trips to the job site that day. No. 70, sorry, X times S is blocks per trip times 7 trips. So we're going to add that to YT, which is 4 blocks per trip multiplied by 3 trips that day. And then when you find the answer to that, you have 70 blocks per day plus 12 blocks per day by the various trucks, and that equals 82 blocks per day. Okay, 82. That's how many blocks per day that both these trucks give. Okay. The other one, we have these things to look at. The next one was XS plus YT divided by X plus Y. Or S plus T, sorry. Okay. So we found out from X plus YT is the number of blocks, 82 blocks. So that's the number of blocks per day. You can divide by S and T. And S and T was number of trips to the job site. Okay. And we again get the average number of blocks per trip. Okay. So using our numbers, we have 82 blocks per day divided by 10 trips, and it's equal to per day, and that's equal to 8.2 blocks per trip. The trips per day will cancel. Okay, and even then, we can see that xs plus yt is not equal to x plus y, because this is the key right here. X plus y is equal to 14 blocks per trip, and then the average is equal to 8.2 blocks per trip. Okay, so those are not equal. So we can say therefore xs plus yt over xs plus t is not equal to x plus y. Okay, so you can't cancel those out there. If we have s plus t greater than 2t, we mean the total trips in all is greater than twice the number of trips by truck 2. Okay, which is true in the numbers I chose. 10 trips is greater than twice the 3 trips it makes. 3 trips truck 2 makes. Therefore, we have 10 is greater than 6, which checks out. The last one, we're thinking about x over x plus y being greater than 50%. Now, x, again, was the number of blocks per trip for truck 1. So that was 10 blocks per trip. And we're going to divide that by 14 blocks per trip, which is the x plus y, total number of blocks per trip for both trucks. So the 10 divided by 14 is equal to 5/7, which is approximately equal to 71%. Okay, so it's true that x over x plus y is greater than 50%. So it's, remember that part is the fraction of the blocks per trip made by truck 1. Okay, so hopefully this will get you going on the homework. Go ahead and try that. And on Monday, we'll have a video for homework hints. Have a great day.